Troop, good morning.
Chair, good morning. Today we return again to hearing evidence from the families of those who died whilst under the care of trusts in Essex. This morning we will first continue to hear from Emma Harley, giving evidence about her brother Terry White, who died on the 14th of April 2019, aged 36. We will then hear from Ralph Taylor, who will give evidence about Carol Ann Taylor, who died on the 21st of November 2023, aged 75. This afternoon, we will hear from Deborah and Nigel Ridley-Joyce about their father, Peter Ridley-Joyce, who died on the 17th of March 2013. As with previous days, Chair, there may be aspects of today's evidence that are difficult to listen to. For some people, it may not be possible to sit through the 2 sessions, or 3. As with other days, anyone in the inquiry room should feel free to leave at any time. May I again take this opportunity to remind those engaging with the inquiry that emotional support is available for all those who require it. Present here again today are emotional support staff from Hestia, an experienced provider of emotional support at these types of hearings. They are currently in this room and can be identified by their orange-coloured scarves. There is also a private room downstairs where anyone who needs emotional support can talk to the Hestia support staff. If you prefer, you can speak to a member of the inquiry team and we will put you in touch with the emotional support staff. And for those following the hearing online, information about the emotional support that is available can be found on the Lampard Inquiry website at lampardinquiry.org.uk, and the support tab is near the top right-hand corner. We want everyone engaging with this inquiry in whatever way to feel safe and supported. Could I ask that the video is played now, please?
Emma, are you ready to carry on?
I am, yep.
Good. All right, we were about to turn to events of January 2019, and I'd like to start with the 11th of January. So if we could have up, please, page 15 of your witness statement, paragraph 24, just in the event that this helps you with remembering the context. It says there about halfway down the page, on the 11th of January 2019, FRT, First Response Team, Duty, had received a call from Terry's partner as she had tried to contact him and received no response as he was meant to go to a rehab centre. She was advised to call the police to undertake a welfare check. And then it goes on to say, call from FRT from Terry's partner, unable to contact him, advised to contact police. And then it goes on to say at the bottom of that page, an entry from FRT staff. They advised that there were 3 calls to FRT duty. First taken on the 11th of January was made by his partner, Terry's partner, raising concern that he was meant to attend rehab but hadn't. The community mental health liaison nurse on duty taking this call advises that at this time, and then over the page 16, Terry was not under the Trust's mental health services and that they gave advice to contact the police. If the caller was concerned about the patient, they could undertake welfare checks. And then it goes on to say that the community psychiatric nurse who took the call, that he was due to attend rehab that day, hadn't been seen, was not open to EPUT mental health services. Advised that he lived in the Basildon area. However, the Trust's records held an address that was out of the area. The CPN advised that the police be contacted. And then as part of, just pausing there, as part of the root cause analysis investigation, the community mental health nurse was interviewed, I think, on the 28th of June 2019. That's the date that's given here. They said that they didn't recall this telephone call, But looking at the notes, they explained that the call was received from Terry's partner, and that he was registered on their records as living out of the area, and for that reason it would be routine to advise them to contact the police to undertake a welfare check. I just want to ask whether, to the best of your knowledge, that was accurate at that time.
Yeah, I think the transfer of medical records hadn't yet happened, so they were unable to see the previous history. So, you know, when dealing with the call from Terry's partner, the Trust weren't aware that he was under a consultant psychiatrist in habit. They had no idea. They had no access to his psychiatric records, and they didn't take any steps to find out about previous addresses and actually was he under a mental health trust elsewhere.
Because I think at this stage, you tell me, but was Terry living out of the area? Can you help at all with that?
By this point, he was living in Basildon in 2019. Yeah.
Okay.
So there was no attempt made to find out if there was any previous involvement with mental health services.
I wonder then if we could turn to the 15th of January, and to help you, this is at the bottom of page 16. Terry attended that day, Basildon Accident and Emergency. Can you recall this incident?
Yeah, I can very clearly, because this was the penultimate time. He went in with an overdose. He was extremely unwell. I believe he was also delusional and psychotic, even though they didn't take note of that. He believed he was being admitted to the Priory for drug use. And he kept saying it. They wanted to discharge him the following morning. I think I'd been to Basildon Hospital the day before, and I had tried to speak to a couple of doctors about this possible cyst on his brain, but also the fact that here we are yet again. He keeps making suicide attempts, he keeps overdosing, and again explained that he is a huge danger to himself as well as other people. And I kept questioning, why are you not sectioning him? This is, it's unbelievable that he hasn't been sectioned by this point. Anyway, I tried to speak to as many people as I could. I felt, yet again, not listened to. I felt like they didn't really have time for me. I was dismissed and they were completely indifferent to the whole situation. They really didn't want to know, and I think this comes back to the stereotyping of him as being simply a druggie. So the following morning, I got a phone call saying, they want to discharge me. It's happening again. They want to send me home. They can't send me home. I'm not well enough. I've told them. He was begging with me to do something, and also begging them. There are moments in this report where he has become quite aggressive, and they have said this is part of him not being willing to engage. They're not seeing that it's a symptom of his mental health condition, but just that he's not willing to engage, or he was unable to engage in any meaningful assessment. So I think I had another phone call with the doctor again that morning saying, he is really unwell. Do you know his history? Do you know how many times he has done this? He will do it again. You need to do something. Well, when he's still got drugs in his system, we can't really do a mental health assessment. And I don't think a mental health assessment was done on this occasion.
Well, let's just have a look at the entries in your statement, because that might help us to some extent. What it says here at the top of page 17 is this morning he expressed that he needed support for his drug use, denied having any mental health issues, stating that he wanted rehab for his drug use. And then it says with regards to his presenting mixed OD, I think that stands for overdose. He informed RAID that he took an overdose. He disclosed to them that he had more medication at home, which he intends to take to manage his withdrawals. He refused to hand the medication over to RAID, spoke with Synergy liaison worker based in the accident and emergency and referred Terry to her. And then it says at 17:59, I think that must be the time, stated that open road wasn't good enough, stating that if no rehab, and then in quotes, I'm going to kill myself, I'm not being sectioned, I just need to go to rehab for a month. If you don't do it, I'm going to buy more crack, you just watch, end of quote. It then goes on to say he continued to use some expletives. He was unhappy about not being able to go to rehab from the accident and emergency department. He said that he wanted to be put in the Priory, stating that he is in a dark place in his life and that open road is not working. It then goes on to say that the importance of open road and engagement with open road was explained to him to help facilitate his request. He was resistant to the idea, stating that the services for mental health was poor in this country.
He said it.
And then it goes on to say later on, he was going to sit in the accident and emergency department and starve himself until he received a referral to rehab. If we turn over the page, on page 18, he then says he informed the person who made this entry that as an alternative to him ending his life, he is now going to use drugs every night. And in quotes, I will be calling the ambulance when I get off my head and wasting NHS time till I get rehab, end quote. And it says, with regards to suicide, stated that he is suicidal. Mental health section is not going to help me, nor is open road. All I want is rehab. If no one helps me today, I am going to end my life. It then goes on to say under plan, unable to make any meaningful plan due to Terry being resistant and declining every support being offered, ongoing risk of harm to self through drug use, possible risk of accidental self-harm due to lifestyle and drug use, and then possible risk of misadventure. It goes on to say towards the bottom of that page, he also informed RAID that he's meant to be getting admitted to the Priory in Chelmsford. And then they spoke with Priory, who informed them there was no planned admission. And then 11:45 alcohol health team. Terry wants help to help him to stop taking drugs and help him get straight. And then I have given him the relevant leaflet to self-refer to open road. And then over the page, page 19, we can see there a letter from EPUT, or reference to a letter, I should say, from EPUT, RAID Psychiatric Liaison Team dated the 16th of January, states that the assessment dated 16th of January and then assessment dated the 15th. So I think this, in terms of the chronology, relates to the 15th of January with a letter sent on the 16th of January. And that letter is set out in part, I think, further down, but it repeats the information that I've already read out to you, so I'm not going to read that out again. If I could just ask you then to turn to page 24. Here towards the top of the page, we can see an entry. This is still relating to the 15th. Page 24, Terry was noted to have mental capacity. Raid wrote to the GP on the 16th of January 2019, and in this correspondence noted that Terry had said he was due to be admitted to the Priory for rehab after recommendation by the GP. It then repeats that there were that Priory were contacted and that there were no planned arrangements, but that Terry had contacted the Priory himself. And then as part of the root cause analysis, the following paragraphs deals with an entry, I think, from that report, which says, although Terry was noted to have capacity in his contact in the accident and emergency department, and his threats to attempt suicide seemed in response to him being referred to rehab, there is no clear documented assessment of his mental state or a comprehensive documented assessment of risk to self and others. And then it goes on to say, however, it is clear that his presentation was different to seeing the doctor the previous October. That's the consultant psychiatrist from Habit, I think. These notes were not available to A&E. So I think this is the entry that you were referring to when you said there wasn't a mental health assessment.
Yes.
Is that the information that you've obtained from the root cause analysis report?
Yes. There wasn't one done, despite me trying to speak to somebody the previous day, despite his presentations as well. I mean, you can see how I've put in the witness statement. My brother stated he had taken an overdose, was administered intravenous fluids, was unsteady on his feet, had dilated pupils, refused to hand over medication, threatened to end his life, then used drugs repeatedly, yet he denied having mental health issues. And I find it unbelievable that the solution to this presentation was to discharge him to his GP. It's shocking. How is it possible to treat someone so vulnerable in this way?
And so just before we move on, I'd like to just ask you, we have, just so we can put it into context in terms of the chronology, we had the 11th of January, the report by his partner, where a call was made. And then we have the 14th of January, I think it must be, you said the day before, where you had made contact with Basildon Hospital.
Yeah, I went to visit him in hospital, yeah.
And then on the 15th of January, when he attends the accident and emergency department.
That must have been like the 13th or the morning of the 14th, because I went there straight away. Yeah.
So was that for the cyst?
No, this was because he'd been admitted for an overdose.
So this was on the admission for the overdose was on the 15th. Does that help you in terms of when you attended?
Yes, so it would have been that one of those days. Okay. Yeah.
Before you were telling us about that incident on the 15th, where and we've gone through in some detail the entry in the notes about it. Were you on the phone at the time that he was there? I think you made reference to that earlier.
Yes, I was on the phone. Well, he phoned me up in the morning and said they're trying to discharge me. They can't, and I advised him to go back to the reception, because I think he must have already been cleared from the ward, or from his. Yeah, he was on a ward. He must have already been cleared from the ward, and they were trying to get him out. And he said to me that he was saying to them, no, please don't discharge me, I need help. And obviously he was saying all the things that are documented in the witness statement. If you don't help me, I am going to take more drugs, try and kill myself again. And I said, okay, go to the reception and say say all those things, and he wasn't aggressive by this point, but he was saying to the receptionist, I need more help, I am suicidal. And I heard the receptionist over the phone say, as I've told you before, sir, there's nothing else we can do. If you don't go now, I'm calling security.
And you heard that, did you?
I heard that. And for me, that sums up the level of compassion that was shown by staff on every single time he spent in hospital. That's the level of compassion, and it's shocking to have treated Terry in that vulnerable state in such a way. I actually can't believe that happened. I can't believe what I heard.
Turning over the page, we were at page 24. If we could turn to page 25, please. Towards the middle of that page, there's a reference to the RCA report that you make. And it says, with regards to this assessment on the 15th of January, the suicide survey tool was not used. And that was a question I think that you had asked. And the entry says this would be used by A&E staff, but was not used by the RAID team. There is no record of its completion in the referral records handed over from Basildon and Thurrock Hospital Accident and Emergency staff. The Trust do have a comprehensive risk assessment tool which can be used during an assessment, but was not able to be undertaken on the 15th of January due to Terry's presentation. It then goes on to say the part that I've already referred to earlier, there's no clear documented assessment of his mental state. It seems an obvious question to ask you, and I think you've probably already answered it to some extent, but why was it important to you that there was a mental health assessment on Terry on that day, on the 15th of January?
Because I think if they'd have done a proper assessment, they would have realised how unwell he was. They would have taken the time and spent more time talking to him and gaining family opinion, which was crucial in this. I mean, they say a comprehensive risk assessment was not able to be undertaken due to Mr. White's presentation. Surely that shows how unwell he was and how much an assessment was needed. But it wasn't done, and it baffles me why it wasn't done. And I've written here, the obvious question is, if this assessment of his mental state and risk is not done, then how can one make a decision as to whether my brother needed to be sectioned?
I'd like to move on to the following day, the 16th of January 2019 now. And if we look at page 26, paragraph 29 of your witness statement, this might help jog your memory. There's an entry here by EPUT's FRT duty, and it says, received from client partner who expressed concerns about his mental health. So I think this is Terry's partner who has telephoned EPUT's FRT duty, so the first response team duty, regarding concerns about Terry's mental health. She said he was seen and assessed by RAID on the 15th of January and discharged. He was offered help but declined. According to partner, police was called this morning due to a welfare check on him, and she was told that he's fine. The partner continued to express her concerns about his suicidal thoughts and potential overdose. It goes on to say, I reassured her and explained that he has been assessed by the mental health service and police, who both have the right to detain him if necessary. They have not done that. I explained that the risk will be assessed as he presents. And then it goes on, moving on, in terms of our chronology then. That was the 16th, and there are more entries with regard to that, but they, to some extent, are duplicating what we've already heard. But if we turn to page 27, the top of page 27, it says the CPN, so again, this is the community psychiatric nurse, gave reassurance to the caller that Terry had been assessed by the raid team and the police, that they had the option to detain him, and that they had undertaken a welfare check, and that he could be taken to A&E for a mental health liaison team review if there were any further concerns. Can you see that?
Yes.
And so then turning over, that's page 27 of your statement, and then turning over to page 28 of your statement, the next entry that you talk about is March 2019. So I just wonder whether you can help us from the 16th of January 2019 to the beginning of March 2019. What was happening with Terry in that period of time?
He rapidly got worse. And a new friend came on the scene, and he admitted to me that he started doing crack cocaine. So he did exactly what he said he was going to do when he was begging for help. And in my witness statement, it says, I think it's Terry is quoted as saying, "If you don't help me, I will carry on taking drugs. You just watch me, I'll start doing crack." And that's exactly what happened. And I think he felt that there was nowhere to go. There was no help available to him. So what's the point? That was, for me, that was kind of his give up moment. I give up, no one's helping me, I've got no alternative. I'll just do whatever the hell I want.
And so on the 5th of March, here on page 28, there was a fax referral in the records from HABIT, the Havering Access Assessment and Brief Intervention Team that we referred to before, to his general practitioner, advising the patient that he's reported difficulty in obtaining medication and would like a referral to the local mental health services. Mm-hmm. So I think this is reporting Terry asking for medication and a referral to local mental health services. And then if we look at further down that entry, page still on page 28, paragraph 32, the 7th of March 2019, it says accident and emergency letter to his GP surgery. Letter dated the 7th of March 2019, then Basildon University Hospital to the doctor's surgery. Details of recent attendance at the emergency department at Basildon and Thurrock University Hospital. Arrival date the 7th of March 2019. Emergency road ambulance, overdose poisoning, accompanied by police. Referral source, emergency department. So would it appear from this entry in your statement that there was another overdose attempt by Terry on the 7th of March of 2019?
Yeah, there must have been. I think this was around the same time that we didn't often argue because I was big sister. He came to me for advice and encouragement. I was always kind of a safe place for him to offload. However, when he told me he started doing crack, I went mad and really had a go at him. And said something that I deeply regret now, which is that if you start doing crack, there's no going back. And that was one of the last times I spoke to him. So yes, this incident probably did happen. We might not have been speaking for a week or two when it happened.
And then the next entry, are you all right to carry on?
Yeah.
The next entry at paragraph 34, page 29, 13th of March, says had relapse, using cocaine recently, struggling with chronic pain, referral to psychiatrist. Can you see that entry?
Yeah.
And then at the bottom of the page, 15th of March 2019, a letter to the first response team, Thurrock Community Hospital. The letter states, I would be grateful if you could continue follow-up with this 36-year-old man who has previously been under the care of the mental health team services, and then over the page 30 in Havering. He has recently moved to Basildon and has been recommended by the Havering Mental Health Services that he be referred on for further supervision. He has a history of anxiety and depression and has taken serious overdoses in the past. He has also had a history of drug use in the past, but apart from a recent brief relapse with cocaine, he has been drug-free for some time. He has also been thought to have a degree of personality disorder. I've enclosed some correspondence from Havering Mental Health Services for your information. He is no longer taking his mirtazapine, but he's still taking his diazepam daily and his pregloban. I'd be grateful if you could continue his follow-up care. And then we can see in this section a fax message from Nelft. That's where the Habit team were under, dated the 5th of March, stating Terry had been in contact, reporting he was having difficulty getting his medication, and that there are attached copies of his recent care plans and a change of medication fax. Should he not be in your care, he is requesting referral to local mental health services, which we have advised him to speak to you about. And then at the bottom of the page, it says that these consultant psychiatrist at Habit, Terry has a history of self-harming behaviour and has taken serious overdoses in the past. It says there was one in October last year and a second in early December last year. He had to be admitted in ITU following his second overdose with the intention of taking his own life. On the subsequent page, the plan states he'll be reviewed in the clinic on the 2nd of October 2019. We can't see here reference to his attendance in the Accident and Emergency Department in Basildon in January of 2019. That doesn't appear to be referred to here. Are you able to help at all with whether that information was passed on or not, or is that something you don't know?
I don't know. I think is this referring to the 15th of January admission?
I believe it's a letter referring to a letter on the 15th of March from Habit to his GP. And it's the consultant psychiatrist at Habit that's providing the information about his past overdoses. I think that's what it's it's referring to. But if you can't help at all, then we can move on.
I mean, it's good. I guess it's good in a way, as it sounds like it is an indication that there was an attempt to share information from Habit to EPUT.
In fact, if we have a look at page 31 of your statement, that might help us. Paragraph 36, it says on the 18th of March, a faxed referral from Terry's GP was received by the first response team service, confirming his current medication and asking EPUT to continue his follow-up care. Recent correspondence the GP had received from Habit was included with the referral. And then it says that letter was dated the 15th and it was received by faxed on the 18th of March. That was from Basildon GP. And then it goes on to say the GP included the background records from Habit and indicated his history of anxiety and depression and serious overdoses. He noted Terry's use of cocaine, but that he had been drug-free for some time. And then there's several references which have been repeated. And the last sentence there is no indication of acute risk to self in the GP referral. Can you see that entry?
Yeah.
I'd like you, please, to turn to page 32 of your statement. We can see here, paragraph 38, reference to a date, the 21st of March 2019, and that there was a screening that took place on this date, the 21st of March, where he was screened by a doctor, offered routine FRT assessment appointment within 14 days. And then it goes on to say that the referral was screened by a consultant psychiatrist on the 21st of March 2019, and a routine assessment appointment was asked to be scheduled. And that the consultant, it says here, for a routine assessment by a nurse and an appointment within 14 days. Can you see that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Turning over the page then, page 33, a letter dated the 22nd of March 2019. I think this is an entry where you refer to the spelling of Terry's name as being incorrect or correct.
Here it's actually correct.
Okay. And then it says, following receipt of a referral for our services, we would like to invite you for an initial assessment with our first response team. Please telephone or ask a representative, and then it gives the telephone number to arrange an appointment. Should we not hear from you within 4 working days, we will assume you no longer want our help, and we will let the referrer know that we're closing your file. And then further down the page at the bottom of that, the letter was sent to Terry asking him to contact the team to make an appointment. Is there any observation that you want to make about that?
Yeah, it's completely inappropriate to send someone a letter to put the burden on them to make the appointment, especially when it's very difficult for certain people to do that when they're so unwell. Yeah, it's just inappropriate.
We can see, turning to page 35 of your statement, paragraph 43, on the 28th of March, there's a letter. Here we can see to Terence White.
Name spelt wrong.
Okay. This is to confirm an assessment appointment has been booked for you as follows, for the 17th of April 2019. And so that was for his assessment appointment with the first response team. And as we know, that appointment was due to be, was after Terry's sad death.
Yeah, it came too late.
And if we look at page 36 of your statement, in the middle of the page, it says here that the referral received by the team was processed and assessed quickly. And this is, I think, a quote from the RCA report. The appointment was scheduled within 4 weeks because it was a non-urgent referral, and the booking appointment letter gave details of how help or support could be obtained from the first response team in the interim, providing their contact details, out-of-hours services, and advice on visiting accident and emergency if urgent assistance is required. And then investigators, I think this is the RCA investigators, did not identify any concerns in the assessment and scheduling of the appointment. I'd like to ask you then about an entry in April, moving to events in April of 2019. At the top of page 37, there's an entry here in your statement about the 1st of April, where it says he did not attend for healthcare assistant appointment. Do you know what that's in respect of?
Yeah, I think it was to do with the cyst on his brain that was being investigated, which was never explained to him properly. So this is, another patient factor that I think increased his risk of suicide. The fact that he believed it was a brain tumour, he was extremely stressed about that. It could also have been to do with his mental health, but it's not clear for what. But he did not attend. He was not in a place to be attending appointments by himself. He couldn't cope well enough to attend an appointment.
And I hope you'll forgive me for summarising the following part of your statement at page 37, paragraph 47. But it refers to the 10th of April 2019, which is when a call was made by the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, who telephoned the first response team, reporting that Terry had ticked on a form that he had completed for the Department for Work and Pensions on the 13th of February 2019, that he was suicidal. That information was passed on 2 months later by the Department for Work and Pensions in April, from your entries in your statement, it would appear that there were no contact details held by the first response team, and DWP then contacted his GP, who provided contact details for Terry, but the number that was given was not available when it was contacted, and FRT team were unable to make contact with him. At page 39 of your statement, there's an entry in the middle of the page here regarding the RCA report, and that investigators had asked the community psychiatric nurse if, having asked police to undertake a welfare check, she advised that she hadn't considered at that time. However, her assessment of his risk was low. So I think this is in respect of the earlier attendance. And that it goes on to say investigators noted entries in the GP shared care records on the 5th of April, that they had also been contacted by the Department of Work and Pensions, and that what had become clear is that they needed to speak to mental health services and that they were provided with contact details. And the report goes on to say it would have been beneficial for her to have alerted the GP. We know then from what happened thereafter that Terry was found, sadly, deceased. He died by ligature on the 14th of April of 2019, whilst he was awaiting an appointment to be seen by the FRT team, which was due to take place that month. Mm-hmm. There was a post-mortem and toxicology investigation that happened, and the toxicology report confirmed there was the presence of alcohol, cannabis and cocaine at the time of Terry's death, and that the level of cocaine that was found within his system would have affected the state of his mind. And what followed was that there was an inquest, is that right? Mm-hmm. Did you attend that inquest?
I did, along with James.
That's your brother?
Yeah.
Did you have any legal representation at that inquest?
We didn't know. We weren't made aware that we could have any.
Were the trust represented? Do you know, can you remember?
Yes, just by 2 people.
Did they have legal representation? Can you remember?
I can't remember.
And so you made reference to two people from the trust. Were they 2 witnesses?
It was the people that wrote the root cause analysis document.
And they attended the inquest, did they?
Yeah, but there were no other people there. There were no other psychiatrists there or doctors or nurses who would have been present on each occasion, each hospital admission.
I'd like to turn now to recommendations that you would invite the chair to consider. Would you like to speak to the recommendations that you would invite the chair?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd like to say is about the seriousness of ADHD. It's a term, it's a diagnosis that's bandied around quite a lot these days. Everybody thinks they've got it. This is the seriousness of it. If you have ADHD and it can tip into something else. And that was a patient risk factor with Terry, yet it was never spoken about. No one ever addressed that with him and said, okay, you know, how do you look after yourself? How do you keep yourself well? So I think we really need to be taking neurodivergence seriously and mental health. There needs to be a hell of a lot more training on that. The second thing I would like to say is that there was a complete lack of care and empathy in every single interaction with staff. And, you know, we're talking about the most vulnerable people in our society, people with mental health conditions, people who are really, really unwell. And I didn't witness or feel any compassion at all from any member of staff. And I don't think Terry felt any compassion either. And I think given that compassion is one of the NHS's 6 core values, that's quite a biggie. I felt that he was stereotyped as well. I felt that happens quite a lot. Well, I know it did in his case. He was dismissed as a bit of a druggie. There was definitely a disproportionate focus on his substance misuse rather than actually looking at what has caused that substance misuse, what has led to it. I think there needs to be a change of attitude, lots of staff training in prejudice, you know, and recognising our own prejudices and then continuing to act in a professional manner. So more staff training. I think a lot more work around therapy as well. At not one point was Terry offered any therapy, yet that is kind of key for someone like him. It would have been key. I think he would have responded really well to therapy. I know it's very expensive, but at least, you know, try and make sure most staff, especially in the mental health area, have some understanding of therapy processes. And, you know, where were the therapists, the advocates, the mentors, the key worker? Where was that one person to look at his whole history and, you know, sit him down and explain to him, okay, so you have ADHD, you have experienced early childhood trauma, you know, all the patient factors that I've listed, someone to sit him down.
Just to help you, there at page 43, paragraph 60 of your statement. I'm not sure if that helps at all.
Yes, it does, thank you. The social factors he was experiencing, so the debt, the loss of access to his eldest daughter, or his physical health problems. He had a mild stroke. He had the cyst on his brain. For years he'd had anxiety and depression, which is often associated with ADHD. Features of personality disorder. You know, there was at no point was there one person who sat down and listened to him with real empathy and said, okay, we're going to talk about how to live well.
Earlier on in your evidence, you talked about collateral information and how there was, in particular, one occasion where you felt you were listened to and you were able to provide information about Terry, and that, in your experience, appeared to be quite isolated. Is there anything more you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, I think that would be something else I would suggest for the recommendations. I think communication with family is crucial for any mental health patient. I mean, sometimes people aren't able to describe what's going on in their heads, yet family members can often quite clearly see what needs to happen and how they could be helped. So I think families really need to be listened to. It's, I tried for years and years and years, and I wasn't heard.
Thank you, Emma. Those are all the questions that I have for you. We've now got some photographs that we're going to display. Can I thank you very much for attending today to give your evidence as articulately and clearly as you have. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. That concludes your evidence.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chair, that concludes Emma Harley's evidence, and I'm being asked if we could please now take a break of 15 minutes before the next witness, so 11:15, please.
11:15. Thank you, Ms. Chair. Ms. Malhotra, thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair. We're ready to hear from our first live witness this morning. Ralph, he would like to be referred to by his first name, and for Carol to be referred to by her first name. Ralph would like to affirm, and I'll ask if that can be done now, please.
I, Ralph Taylor, do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Ralph. We heard from you on the 24th of September of last year when you told us about Carol and how she lived her life. Carol died on the 21st of November 2023, aged 75 years. She died from a pulmonary embolism, a clot in her lung. You've provided two witness statements, the first dated the 27th of May 2025, and a second statement dated the 20th of August 2025. Is that right?
That's right.
And have you had an opportunity to read both of your statements recently?
Yes, I have.
Can you confirm that the contents are true and accurate?
I can.
Carol was known to mental health services since 2012. Does that accord with your recollection?
Yes.
And in the summer of 2012, she was having episodes of agitated behaviour and unusual behaviour for her, and she was also seemed to be disassociating. Is that right?
That's all correct.
Can you tell us, to the best of your recollection, what was her diagnosis at that time?
Well, she was diagnosed, it's probably in early 2013, she was diagnosed as suffering from recurrent depressive disorder.
Okay. And we'll come on to 2013 in a moment, but I'd like to just pick up in October of 2012 in terms of our chronology. There was an episode where Carol self-harmed, and she admitted herself voluntarily to a mental health hospital. Can you recall which hospital that was, please?
Yes, it was the Chelmer ward of the Derwent Centre, which is associated with Princess Alexandra Harlow.
Can you recall how long Carol stayed at the Derwent Centre in October of 2012?
I can't say definitely, but I reckon it was about a week to 10 days, because she went there voluntarily and therefore she could discharge herself, and so she asked to go home, and there was no objection from the psychiatrist that she shouldn't go home.
Okay. Just moving in time in terms of our timeline and our chronology, in December of 2012 there was another instance of self-harm. This time, Carol had written a note expressing her intention in harming herself. Is that correct?
That's right. Did you say the inquiry has that note? Or
Well, it's in your statement. Let's have a look at it.
Oh, yes, sorry. The actual note I never saw, because it was taken by the police, who were called when the incident took place. And I've never followed up obtaining it.
Okay. Following that incident in December 2012, was there another occasion where Carol was detained under the Mental Health Act around that time?
Yes.
As an inpatient?
Yes, what happened is that her injuries from the second self-harming were quite severe, and she had to go to the London hospital and receive specialist treatment. When she was at the hospital, she was on one-to-one surveillance, and when we were discussing what would happen to her, because of the way that area health authorities work, they said that the appropriate hospital for her to go to would actually be the one she'd been to previously, at Chelmer ward of the Derwent Centre.
I see. So this, when you say London Hospital in your statement, you refer to Whipps Cross. Is
Yes,
that the hospital?
I'm sorry. She was initially she went to Whipps Cross, but because of the nature and severity of her injuries, she was transferred to the London Hospital, where she remained actually until she was actually transferred to the Derwent Centre, and there she was sectioned by the London Hospital psychiatric team.
I see. And I can take you to it in your statement if needs be, but around this time, so from December 2012, early 2013, was consideration given to electroconvulsive therapy for Carol?
Yes, during the period that she was in hospital and she was in the unit from December to April 2013. To start with, they tried a course of treatment by medication, which they pretty soon worked out wasn't going to work. So they suggested ECT. My family and I had some reservations about the treatment because we had no experience of it, and so we asked them if they could try to find something by way of medication which would work. And they then prescribed what I describe as a cocktail of drugs, which soon after they were administered started getting her into a much more responsive frame of mind.
I see.
So she didn't have the ECT?
No, she didn't have the ECT then. It was given it was the next step had these cocktail not worked.
And so I think you say that she was largely manageable at that stage in terms of her symptoms.
Yes.
Until we get to around about November of 2022, when she reported hallucinations following a course of antibiotics after a cystoscopy. And she reported manageable anxiety at the time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'd like to turn then to January 2023 now. And in your statement, we can have a look at it. It's page 4, paragraph 18.
Yeah, I have it.
We can see here that Carol emailed her general practitioner reporting that she was unwell. Does that accord with your recollection?
It does.
And then in April 2023, looking at paragraph 19 now of your statement, Carol was referred to the West Essex Dementia and Frailty team. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then I'd like to move on to events in May 2023, please. And if I can ask you to turn to page 11 of your first witness statement. I'm sorry, we're going to be jumping around quite a few pages here, so I hope you can bear with me. But on page 11...
I've got the page.
And it's on the screen in front of you as well,
Yeah,
Ralph,
yes.
if that helps. We can see there's an entry, the 3rd of May. It says, Carol's daughter rang the Specialist Dementia and Frailty team to let them know that her mother's mental state was deteriorating and that she had been contacted by someone who was offering an appointment for the next day. Can you see that?
I can.
And then following that same chronology, we can see here on the 5th of May 2023, Carol was seen by the West Essex Specialist Dementia and Frailty team for an assessment. We can see that in the chronology, but if I could also ask you please to turn to page 6 of your statement.
Yes.
Page 6, paragraph 27. This gives us a little bit more detail about that assessment that took place on the 9th of May. And there's reference here to a memory clinic appointment on the preceding Friday. Can you help us at all with what that memory clinic appointment was about?
Yes, because although up until the spring of 2023, Carol had still had connections with she was still being monitored by other departments of the mental health service. She was actually referred to the Dementia and Frailty team, which actually confused her rather, because she said that she didn't have any problems on her memory, that she had an existing condition and she wanted treatment for that. And
forgive me for interrupting you. You say that she was confused. Can you just explain a little bit about why was she confused?
Actually by the nature of her condition, her was a relapse to her recurrent depressive disorder. She disassociated herself. She was not responsive. She didn't eat and drink well. And this was happening to her, and she realised that she needed help again. But she didn't think she needed help with her memory, and she didn't think that she was suffering from dementia. And so she thought, and we thought, that the focus should be more on recognising this was a relapse of her diagnosed condition, rather than carrying out tests. tests as to whether she was suffering from dementia.
I see. And it goes on to report here Carol's self-harm. Can you tell us, please, firstly, were you present during this assessment that took place on the 9th of May 2023? Can you remember?
Yes, I would have been present.
Okay. And was Carol expressing thoughts to end her life at that time?
She wasn't.
Can you tell us what advice you were given by the mental health services at that time?
I think I got the impression they were going through a process. So Carol had been referred to them on the basis of it being a Fraudian dementia service, and one of the first aspects of their care plan was that an MRI was requested, and I think in hindsight the MRI was to work out whether her brain showed that there was evidence of dementia symptoms.
I see. And so this was through the dementia team, the dementia and frailty team that she was seen. You say here at paragraph 27, page 6 of your statement, that you were told to keep an eye on Carol. Is that the advice that you were given?
Yes, that was the advice that I was given. Of course, it's difficult. Although I'm quite mobile, it's difficult to provide 24/7 care when you're living at home. And Carol was she was disabled by reason of a number of joint operations, so she could only mobilise by crutches. And so she spent a lot of, by then she previously pursued activities, but by then she wasn't pursuing those activities, and so she was more or less sedentary in the house.
But given that Carol had just had another instance of self-harm, was the only advice that you were given to keep an eye on her? Was there anything else?
That was the advice I was given, to keep an eye on her. Although I would have to say, from my aspect, I thought that Carol's self-harming then was a cry for help. She knew she needed treatment. She wasn't getting what she thought was effective treatment, and so if she used something to indicate that she would be attempting suicide, I took it as a cry for help.
I see. And was Carol seen by the community nurse at all?
Yes, she was.
I think if we look to help you, page 7, paragraph 30 of your witness statement, there's an entry in her notes which are recorded in your statement here, that Carol was seen at home by a community nurse on the 9th of May at 3:30. It says here, Carol was reported as denying any suicidal ideation at this point. And it goes on to say the following in the next few sentences. From a mental health nurse who reportedly joked that there was more chance of Carol going to prison, I think it's supposed to say, than getting an inpatient bed. You go on to say, also the nurse made a call to his office stating that he was going to be detained longer at Carol's address than first thought, and could his sandwich be put in the fridge? Can you recall that conversation?
Unfortunately, I do, because just my observation, it wasn't a very helpful observation that he made to Carol. And it was neither professional or appropriate. And I don't see how he could have thought it was helping her in any way.
What impact did those two comments, one about putting his sandwiches in the fridge, the second about a reference to prison, what impact did those two references have on Carol, if anything?
I think it had impacts on Carol and myself and my daughter, is that we got frustration that Carol wasn't being listened to about requiring specialist psychiatric treatment for her declining condition.
And what about you and the family? Did you feel that you were being listened to? Were you vocalising concerns?
My daughter, my younger daughter, did actually phone the community nurse department where he came from, and we decided not to make a formal complaint about it, except it was noted that we didn't think it was really professional way of dealing with a vulnerable patient.
On the 10th of May, so sticking with this timeline, on page 7 again, paragraph 31 of your statement, in case it helps you to have that in front of you. On the 10th of May, there was a call to the Specialist Dementia and Frailty team. Is that right?
That's right.
And can you give us some context for that call, please?
Well, I think I've already given that context, really. It was just a response to the behaviour or what the community nurse had said when he came to provide what we thought was support.
I see. So this is reference to that call.
Indeed.
That your daughter made. All right. I'd like to move then to the 15th of May. On this occasion, Carol called the Specialist Dementia and Frailty team. You say in your statement, because she was bad, it says the second line down, she was feeling bad. Can you describe how Carol was, please, at this time?
Yeah, she was becoming increasingly anxious, and she was also showing signs of disassociating herself, and just being concerned about her deterioration and what could be done about it.
On the 16th of May, there was a Specialist Dementia and Frailty team clinical meeting where Carol's case was discussed. Was any information from that meeting passed on to you at all?
I can't recall if it was, because it wasn't a meeting that any the patient or any member of the family participated in. We were aware that that an EC, as part of the care plan, that an ECG was recommended, and that was arranged by the GPs.
And so do I take from that then that you weren't invited to provide any thoughts before that discussion?
I thought that was, that's what it was. I took that to be a multidisciplinary clinical meeting.
Yes. Okay. And turning then to the 18th of May, Carol was seen by a consultant psychiatrist on this day by the Specialist Dementia and Frailty team at St Margaret's in Epping. Is that right?
Yes, that's it. I was present.
There was a treatment plan that was devised, and we can see this. So this is the bottom of page 7, paragraph 34, to orientate you to this, the 18th of May. She was seen by a consultant psychiatrist, and then over the page, the top of page 8, we can see there the plan that was, the care plan that was put in place for metazapine to be prescribed, referral for psychology, and a referral for community psychiatric nurse allocation, follow-up after 3 months, and after MRI head scan for feedback and follow-up. Can you see that?
I've seen that.
And we can see here at paragraph 35, it records there the consultant psychiatrist noted that Carol had suicidal ideation but no intent. And I think this goes back to what you were saying before, that there would often be instances of self-harm as a cry for help. Is that right?
That's what I interpreted it.
Now, your statement then records a number of appointments for Carol's physical health, the 23rd of May, the 24th of May, the 30th of May. I'm not going to ask you about those, but I'd like to move on to events in June of 2023, please.
Yeah, before you move on, can I just mention in paragraph 38, there was an ECG carried out, and then it was reviewed by a consultant cardiologist, indicating that the ECG showed in abnormalities, and this should be problematic for any future dementia drug use. I was not aware that that was ever followed up when she actually received treatment following her serious self-harming.
And do you know if that was ever followed up in her final admission? Do you know if that was followed up?
I was not aware that that was followed up.
Turning then to events in June 2023, please. Page 8, paragraph 39 of your statement. You say here that Carol was noted to have fleeting thoughts of suicide, but no active plan. And on the 13th of June, paragraph 41 of your statement, her case was discussed by the specialist dementia and frailty team. There was ongoing anxiety, suicidal thoughts, again with no intent, and a plan was to refer her to psychology and to allocate her a community psychiatric nurse. Can you see that?
Yes, I see that.
And then following that, if we turn over the page to page 9, we can see here that a care coordinator was allocated, and Carol was seen by that care coordinator on the 23rd of June. That's at paragraph 43, page 9. Can you see that?
Yes.
And I just want to read out an extract from what's in your statement there. It says the following. Carol reported that she lacks motivation to do anything in the house, felt anxious in mood with thoughts of self-harm at times, but with no current plan to act on those thoughts. Carol's daughter reported that Carol had a history of mental illness dating back 10 years ago, when she was actively suicidal and attempted to cut her throat and arms. It then goes on to say that the current episode of mental ill health was reported by Carol's daughter as being the cruise that Carol and her husband had taken recently. And I just wonder if you can help us in terms of the chronology. Where does the cruise holiday fit in? We're now at June 2023. Can you recall?
Yes, I mean, Carol 75th birthday was the 25th of March 2023. She decided that she would like to go on a cruise to see the Northern Lights, which I think the cruise was about 10 days long. She didn't like travelling by air, but we were able to pick up the cruise ship at Tilbury, and we got onto the ship and we were on there for 3 days, including her birthday, which we celebrated. And then she developed symptoms which she sort of collapsed in the dining room, and she was referred to the ship's doctor, who diagnosed that she was suffering from pneumonia. So the ship was then approaching Reykjavik, and the first thing that happened when we arrived at Reykjavik is that Carol was removed from the ship by ambulance and taken to a hospital in Reykjavik. And there she was treated there for about 8 days because they diagnosed her. They were able to treat her pneumonia, but they then diagnosed that she was suffering from type 2 diabetes. Up to then, she'd been borderline type 2 diabetes, and they then they prescribed insulin. I then had to leave the ship. I stayed in a hotel for about 8 days, and then the Icelandic hotel arranged for us to move to what was sort of a hotel care home.
Ralph,
combined.
can I just interrupt you there? Forgive me for interrupting you. Is it right to say that there then came a time where Carol was brought back to the UK when her health was slightly better? Her physical health was
we
slightly
had to wait
better.
for her to be repatriated, but and actually from then, making a generalisation, her health steadily, in my view, just deteriorated, her physical and mental health.
Yeah. I'd like to pick up then with the 30th of June, please. So things, it would seem, as you describe, there was the cruise in March where she, after that, in your view, she deteriorated. We've discussed some instances in May and early June, and then it would seem on the 30th of June, Carol deteriorated further. There was an overdose and another self-harm incident. We can see this at page 10, paragraph 47 of your witness statement. Carol was taken to Whipps Cross, was she?
Yes.
And we can see, if we look at page 11 of your statement, there's a chronology that's set out there at the bottom of page 11, the 30th of June 2023. It says that her self-harm attempt on that occasion was recorded as demonstrating suicidal intent by the mental health liaison clinician who saw Carol. She was nursed on one-to-one observations and was fully assessed, and would be fully assessed, as she needed time to rest. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then over the page, on the 12th, on page 12 of your statement, the 10th of July, Carol was assessed by a Section 12 approved doctor who recommended that Carol be detained under Section 2 of the Mental Health Act. Is that your recollection as well?
That's my recollection.
Okay. Now, this was at Whipps Cross on the 3rd of July. A consultant psychiatrist decided that Carol should be admitted to a mental health ward, which she was on the 11th of July, and that was the Roding ward, where she was transferred from Whipps Cross Hospital. Is that a fair
correct.
Summary? Okay. And I'd just like you to help us, please, with the Roding ward, if you're able to tell us what sort of ward that was.
The ward was for elderly patients over 65, as I understand it. It was split into two, with one unit being specifically for patients who were suffering from dementia, and the other four patients who were suffering from other mental health conditions. And it was a smallish ward, I think only about 14 to 15 patients.
So you said that there was one side for dementia patients, others for...
And another side, yes.
And so where was Carol?
She was in the non-dementia part, as I should say, the general mental health treatment.
And it was a ward for older patients?
It's for, yes, it was, the unit is for all patients, I think, elderly patients generally.
And it was a mental health ward?
And it was a secure mental health unit.
I just wanted to understand better from your witness statement what sort of ward that the Roding ward was. Now, do you have some concerns about Carol's care whilst she was at the Roding ward?
Yeah, I had, in general, I had concerns that the treatment she was receiving didn't take into account the physical conditions that she was already suffering from, and also the decisions about how to treat her, the mental health side of her. I also had concerns about that because one of the cocktails of drugs being given in 2013 was lithium, which she'd overdosed on, and I know was a drug where she needed regular blood tests to make sure that it was all under control, but that was not prescribed, and I attended multidisciplinary meetings probably weekly for the first probably 6 or 7 weeks of her admission there, and my general feeling was that they were not really getting to grips with balancing out treatment of her mental health conditions with her physical health conditions.
I see.
Can I just ask something? You've just said that it was not prescribed. Do you mean the lithium was not prescribed, or the blood
lithium,
test?
yes, sorry. The lithium she'd been receiving up until she self-harmed in June 2023. She'd overdosed on that and another medication which she'd been prescribed by the Frauti and dementia team, and so first of all at Whipps Cross they treated her for the overdose, but after that they didn't put her back on lithium.
Oh, thank you. Full name.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to just ask you about some aspects of your witness statement, some aspects of Carol's care. The first is about her hydration and her eating. So just tell us, please, how was Carol's eating and drinking while she was on the ward from what you observed?
Yeah, can I preface that by saying that one of the concerns which I had, which we might get onto, but we were limited to visiting Carol 1 hour a day, 3 times a week for just 2 people. I went on every occasion mainly with one or other of my daughters.
And do you know why that was at all? Why was there a restriction?
I was never explained, but it was. She was, while she was there, she was referred. She was transferred to the Princess Alexandra Hospital.
We'll come on to that.
Yeah, right. And all I would say in relation to that, they had unrestricted visiting, or rather the restricting of what one might call normal hospital hours. I felt that we all felt that it was restrictive for 3 hours, 3 times a week, just 1 hour each time.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you about a section of your witness statement. This is page 18. And again, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to jump around slightly your witness statement. Your first witness statement, page 18, paragraph 76.
Yes.
This reports, this is an extract that you've included from a patient safety investigation report. What it says here with regards to the 24th of August, concern was expressed regarding the appetite suppressant properties of the Ozempic injection. It was decided that its use should be discussed with the diabetes specialist nurse. Carol was reported to have said she did not feel like eating. So I just want to ask you, can you help us with why was Carol having Ozempic injections?
She'd been, since her return from from Iceland. She'd been referred to our GP for treatment for her diabetes, and they had prescribed Ozempic. If I'm not jumping on, what happened is that I sent an email to the psychiatrist in charge on the 3rd of April, just questioning why, because Carol was losing weight, they were still using Ozempic, because I'd picked up that this was a drug which was being used more widely for weight reduction, and it didn't seem to be appropriate. But why it took them 3 weeks to respond to that and discontinue the injection, I don't know.
So we can see that page 19, paragraph 79 of your statement, the 3rd of August 2023, you emailed the consultant expressing your concerns about the use of Ozempic for Carol. And we can see at page 18, paragraph 77, going back over the page, that on the 25th of August 2023, the Ozempic was discontinued. Does that accord with your recollection?
That accords with my record. I didn't know. I have to admit, I don't know. I probably wasn't aware that they discontinued the injection when they said they did. I have no reason to doubt that, but I'm not sure when I became aware that it had actually been discontinued.
Now I'm going to ask you to turn to page 13 of your witness statement, please. Here on page 13, paragraph 57, you produce a table. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see that.
There's a table of Carol's weight loss.
Yes.
And if we look on the entries in August, so 5th of August, 73, 12th of August, 74.4, 19th of August, 74.2, and then the 26th of August, 75.2. So given Carol's Ozempic was stopped on the 25th of August, it would seem from this table on the 26th of August, her weight increased. Can you see that?
I can see that.
And then on the 2nd of September 23, her weight increased again, 75.6. So it seems that there was a slight increase. And then if we go further down, the 30th of September, there was a slight increase again.
Yes.
But if we look further down, October and then November, according to this chart, there were some quite big reductions in her weight loss around this time. Can you see that?
Yes. Can I make an observation that the sort of the weight when she was admitted, she had not been eating for a while before she self-harmed in June 2023. At times, her weight was, which I think her weight, if I sort of tried to convert it into pounds and stones, I thought her weight then is on that basis of 80. It's about 12 stone. And just very roughly, the last entry is roughly 10 stone. But in practical terms, she hadn't been eating very well since probably April 2023, when her weight was more likely to about 14 stone. And so there was the table, which was part of the patient safety inquiry report, only reflects the time when she was actually in the unit.
Yes, and we can see at
And
paragraph...
my point is that there was a substantial deterioration in her weight over that longer period.
From around the April
Yeah.
of 23. And just looking at paragraph 58,
Yes.
what it says here summarises the patient safety report that over a course of 20 weeks, again, while she was admitted, her weight reduced by 20%. And at page 14 of your statement, you quote from the patient safety report. This is the very top of the page, page 14, that on admission, her risk of malnutrition increased from low to medium on the 11th of November 2023. So can you just explain for us, please, what this part is referring to and what your understanding of her risk of being low to medium meant?
I wasn't aware of that assessment until after the patient safety inquiry report was provided, which was some time after Carol's death. As a practical observation from the point of view of the family and as an indication of Carol's, the symptoms of Carol's current depressive disorder, she was reluctant to eat and drink, generally, and I wasn't aware, although we were encouraged we were asked to encourage her to eat and drink. We were only able to see her on a very limited period, and so I wasn't aware of much as what has been included in the patient safety report about what was being done, if anything, to take into account her weight loss and the effect that was having on her physical and mental health conditions.
Okay, well, we may touch upon some aspects of that a little bit more, but I wonder if you can help at all. Do you know if she was given any nutritional supplements, a sort of drink to have, for example?
Yes, I think she was given supplements. And although if the time we visited her coincided with a mealtime, we were encouraged to sit with her and encourage her to eat. But we had no more success in doing that than I think the staff did.
Yeah. And we can have a look at some of those entries. So paragraph 63, page 14 of your statement. This is from a referral for ECT, which we'll come on to in a moment, but it's dated the 20th of October 2023. It says low in mood, both objectively and subjectively, refusing to eat and drink, refusing to take care of self, self-neglect, repeated suicidal ideation, wants to die and thinks by not eating and drinking she can pass away. Also has diagnosis of dementia in Alzheimer's disease, atypical or mixed type. Was that a diagnosis that you were aware of at the time?
We were aware of that before that date, actually, because the psychiatrist had referred to it in a multidisciplinary meeting, but he only. The diagnosis was given she was suffering from dementia. I think it only subsequent to her death it's been established that she was actually suffering from a mild form of dementia. And if I would actually say in relation to that, my concern was that going back to how her mental health condition was treated is that it did seem to me there was more emphasis on the dementia side than there was on the deterioration in her mental health condition by virtue of the relapse of her diagnosed condition.
And that being the depressive disorder that you mentioned at the outset?
Yes.
But the notes we've just looked at suggest that they were alive to the depressive condition and concerned about her self-neglect, not eating as a result of that?
We weren't set. I mean, we drew their attention to her legs being ulcerated, or on one occasion. I'm not sure if they did regular checks as to, you know, on how regular their checks were on the deterioration in her legs, swelling, etc.
I was suggesting that the notes that we've just looked at,
Yes,
at least indicate, don't they, that they were aware of her depression and the fact that this was stopping her from eating and drinking.
yes, they were aware.
Yes. And just on that theme, if we can turn, please, to page 16, paragraph 66 of your statement.
Yes.
We can see here a letter from the speech and language therapy at St Margaret's Hospital, dated the 17th of October 2023, which refers to the fact that Carol was referred to the community speech and language therapy by the Roding ward for reasons of food refusal and patient-reported issues with swallowing. Can you see that?
Yes.
I'm just going to read out this section. It says, she was seen on the ward on the 17th of October. Staff report gradual decline in eating and drinking, now refusing most things, refusing medication. Carol reported to me that her food won't go down and points to her throat, but unable to elaborate further on this. Mouth is dry. Carol did not wish to have any food or fluids in my presence, and therefore I was unable to assess further. Based on staff accounts and her overall presentation, it is highly likely that Carol's self-reported swallow problems are related to the overall deterioration in her mental health and not due to any physiological oropharyngeal dysphagia, which is difficulties with swallowing. So can you help at all whether she was seen again by the community speech and language therapy team?
I was not aware.
And it seems from this extract that I've read out that their assessment was it wasn't physiological, it was as part of Carol, as someone who was living with mental ill health, that her food refusal and her fluid refusal was part of her mental health.
Yes.
And I think you said earlier that that was your assessment as well. Is that right?
Yes.
I'd like to just turn then briefly to paragraph 67, staying on the same page. It says there, we explained, so this is a report from her records on the 25th of October. We explained that because of her physical health, it is best not to wait, and ECT would be the best option. Improvement is expected much sooner than with medications. We explained we made a referral who has authorised the ECT, and I'm going to turn to the ECT in just one moment, but just can I ask you please to turn to page 20 of your statement. Page 20, paragraph 84. There's an entry here, the 4th of October. Can you see that?
Yes.
And it seems that on this occasion, and you referred to this earlier, Carol was transferred to the Princess Alexandra Hospital Accident and Emergency Department following concern that she had not been eating or drinking sufficiently and had become lethargic, so did not attend the meeting. Main concerns regarding Carol's care were reported as her poor food and fluid intake and management of insulin. Can you see that?
Yes.
And it goes on to say that there were ongoing risks remained of self-neglect with poor food and fluid intake. And she was transferred back to the Roding ward, is that right?
Yes.
And just to be clear, that the main reason for her transfer to the Princess Alexandra Hospital was because of her refusal for food and drink, is that right?
That's right, she was dehydrated, and so they explained she needed to be rehydrated and had to be sent to the general hospital to do that.
So does it follow that that was not something that the Roding ward were able to administer?
I questioned them and they said not. I'm not sure why that was so.
And was there, so she was transferred back to the Roding ward. Can you help us with when that might have been?
She wasn't, her sort of mood basically remained constant. She not really, she wasn't really responsive. And when she was encouraged to eat and drink more, it was very difficult to get her to do it.
No. Can I help you in terms of the time scales? If you have a look at page 22 of your statement, paragraph 91, towards the bottom of that page,
Yes.
there's a letter here, which is a discharge summary from the Princess Alexandra Hospital, which refers to the date of the 6th of October 2023. So she was admitted on the 4th of October, and it would seem that she was discharged on the 6th of October. Does that accord with your recollection?
Yeah, that records my recollection.
And we can see there at paragraph 91, reduced oral intake and dehydration as the main reasons for the admission. Turning over the page 23, it says there, patient discharged back to mental health ward. Can you see that?
I could see that.
Okay. And just turning finally on this topic, please, to page 24, so over the page, we can see here at paragraph 95, for example, that with regards to food and fluid intake, there continued to be difficulties up until and continuing. Here it's 13th of November 2023. Can you see that at paragraph 95?
I can.
And it says here, due to poor fluid and food and fluid intake, Carol is at risk of dehydration. Due to poor mental state, Carol is currently observed to have poor food and fluid intake and has also identified some weight loss. Carol has a history of dehydration and previously resulted in her being admitted to the Princess Alexandra Hospital to have intravenous fluids administered. And at the bottom of that section, it says she was at risk of refeeding syndrome once she starts eating properly again. Carol to have routine bloods twice weekly. Can you see that?
Yes.
I'd just like to turn next to the ECT treatment. Can you please, I'll help you by taking you to your statement, page 14, paragraph 64A and 64B. So that's your first witness statement, page 14,
I've got
paragraph 64A and B. There was an assessment on the 16th of October for Carol to have ECT treatment. This is a mental capacity assessment form. And at 64B, it says that she continued with her self-neglect. And then over the page 15, this behaviour will lead to her eventual demise and she does not care. It goes on to say, patient is unable to understand the benefits of ECT. She does not believe that she has a mental health condition that requires treatment. And then at the bottom of a C, subsection C, in underlined, it says she does not have the capacity to make the decision at this time. So that's a long build-up. There is a question, I promise you, which is, can you help us with whether Carol actually had ECT treatment?
She doesn't have the ECT treatment. It's provided, I think it was arranged, but then the background is, according to the hospital, there were problems in administering ECT treatment because there was some of the I don't know the word for it, with the wards where this was given were not in operation at the time, and apart from, so there was that problem, and also it was. Although she was allocated a date for the treatment, that was cancelled, maybe for the same reason of not being enough facilities available. I just make an observation in relation to if they determine that Carol didn't have the capacity to decide whether she should have ECT treatment at all. Could they not have determined that if she didn't have that capacity, isn't it possible that she didn't have capacity to decide whether about eating and drinking or basic things like that? I mean, it's inherent to her condition that she's non-responsive to treatment. But on the one hand, they're expecting her to continue feeding herself, and on the other hand, they determine after she's been in the unit for 4.5 months that she doesn't have capacity to have ECT treatment, and that's when they make that decision. But I don't see how you can take away the fact that she was during I think all of her time there, she was sectioned. The fact that she was sectioned indicates that she wasn't able to be in control of her mental health abilities. So how is it she's able to decide whether or not to eat or not, but able, whether or not to have ECT treatment is separate. And if that's the background to it, I mean, what I would say in relation to that, why not have the ECT treatment earlier? Back in 2013, my recollection is that they offered, or they suggested ECT treatment within 2 months of her admission. And so why, for someone who has a diagnosed mental health condition which has a relapse, when she goes back into the mental health unit, that they don't actually say, well, let's look and see what happened last time, and she, if she was not receptive to eating and drinking then, why are we expecting her to be any different now?
Okay, I'm going to move on to ask you about her VTE risk. So we're going to move on to another topic. We've been going for about an hour,
right.
So I think now it is a good time to take a short break, 10 minutes. If we can come back just before past then.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ralph, I was about to ask you about venous thrombosis risk, and according to the patient safety report, it concluded at page 26 of your witness statement. You've included an extract from it. So page 26, paragraph 104. it says here that poor hydration, reduced mobilisation and the use of olanzapine, that this may have contributed to the development of pulmonary embolus. Assessment of VTE risk in patients who are prescribed olanzapine and who are experiencing other factors such as dehydration and reduced mobility must be undertaken. And areas of improvement include highlight VTE reassessment criteria relating to reduced mobility and use of medication. So I'd just like to explore that a little bit with you. At page 31, please, of your first statement, paragraph 125, it says here that at Whipps Cross Hospital, where Carol was taken on the 30th of June 2023 following a self-harm incident, until the 11th of July 2023, it says here, her VTE risk, she was said to be at risk of VTE. Can you see that?
Yes.
That there was frailty, severely frail. At page paragraph 126 on the same page, on admission, this would be at the Roding ward, I believe, on the 11th of July 2023, it says a venous thromboembolism risk assessment took place on admission, which concluded the risk was low. And then on the 11th of July, it says discharge letter indicates VTE risk, but further reassessment by doctor on the Roding ward indicates no risk. We can see, and I'm going to ask you about Carol's mobility. So page 27 of your statement, paragraph 108, so it's the bottom of page 27. It says here that Carol was, paragraph 107 first, it says Carol required elbow crutches for indoor mobility and a wheelchair for outdoors. Indoor walking with elbow crutches was assessed as safe and independent, as were all transfers. Can you give us some insight into what Carol's mobility was at the time she was at the Roding ward? Was it the same? Did it change?
I think she had 5 joint operations over 4 or 5 years, which were another factor towards her deterioration, her mental health condition. I think the only difference probably in her, she mobilised quite well on her 2 crutches, and but the difference is during her time there, at the time her in the mental health unit, she was noticeably slower. And she was also spending more time just when she didn't go very far. She only walked one end of the corridor to where her room was, and then up to where the room for visiting for visitors was, or the restaurant was in the same sort of area. But I mean, she wasn't really mobilising very much at all, particularly for our limited observations for the last couple of months probably.
We can see here, if we go a little bit further down, paragraph 108, still on page 27, that when Carol left the Princess Alexandra Hospital, I think that's following her admission for the dehydration, she was noted to be wearing compression socks on her return from there. Do you know if she continued to wear compression socks?
It's very difficult for us to say, because she wore long dresses, which became, as I think I've mentioned before, as she lost weight, they sort of hung off her. She also wore slipper socks, which came up partly up her calf, so her legs weren't on, they couldn't be seen easily. But my daughter, I remember particularly on one occasion, I think Carol said that her legs were sore, and my daughter pulled her dress up to see her legs, and they were very sore. We called in who we thought to be the manager on the ward. He looked at them and he shared our concern, and he said he would do something about it. What he did, I don't know, and it's just an observation that he gave a statement at the inquest, and he couldn't remember he couldn't remember the incident at all. But as I said, it was clear to us that her legs were sore, and she should have been, something should have been done about it, but we're not sure what, if anything, was.
Can you tell us roughly what sort of timescale this was when your daughter noted her legs were sore?
It's probably about 2 to 3 months in from the admission, so sort of maybe September time.
Okay. Now, in November, if we look at page 30 of your witness statement, page 30, paragraph 119, we can see here that there's reference to a pressure sore. Can you see that?
Yes.
And it says on the 4th of November that there was a report that she had a pressure sore, again on the 17th, and it goes on to the 19th as well with regards to how that was treated. Can you help us with how much time Carol was spending out of bed or actually mobilising at this time?
Yes, I think I understand that the staff woke her up and assisted her to get up at breakfast time, which maybe was around 9 o'clock. And then she went back to bed, often around about 9 o'clock in the evening, again with assistance. But during the latter months in particular, because I think at earlier times she might have been participating in group activities at the unit, which she, as far as I'm aware, she subsequently didn't do. But during that time, she just spent her time just sitting on a seat at the end of the corridor, quite near her room, but not doing anything, not with her legs up.
Okay. I'd like to move on, please, to her medication olanzapine. Carol was prescribed olanzapine. Do you know when she was prescribed it? Was it before her admission or after?
Oh,
her
no,
admission?
it was very. I don't know, because I wasn't advised it was being prescribed, but that would not have been until I think late October actually. It did. It may not be true to say that. I know that she had a new medication. I wasn't aware of what it was, but coincidentally, on the night before she died, her mood was lighter. She was more responsive, which we took to be a positive thing. And if that was the effect of olanzapine, that was a positive thing, as I say. But on the other hand, I'm not sure it was an appropriate drug for her to be prescribed with, bearing in mind her other physical conditions.
And I think if we look at page 32, it's a section that I've referred to already, but at the top of page 32 it says assessment of VTE risk in patients who are prescribed olanzapine and who are experiencing other factors such as dehydration and reduced mobility must be undertaken. So is that where your concern arises with regards to olanzapine?
That's a very difficult thing to say, because this concern was raised it came to me in hindsight after I'd seen the post-mortem and subsequently the patient safety inquiry report, because I couldn't understand how VTE could be assessed by one hospital as being at risk, and at another, and in particular the mental health unit, on the same day, saying there was a low risk. It was an early concern of mine when I heard about the embolism, is that why wasn't there any prophylactics being prescribed? Carol had an existing heart condition. She wasn't mobile. She wasn't eating and drinking properly. Her health generally was declining, and there was an opportunity to reassess during the time she was there, but the reassessment wasn't carried out. It was one of the recommendations in the patient safety inquiry that VTE be reassessed, but a little bit late in Carol's case.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to move on to ask you about observations. Towards November, towards the time of Carol's death, can you recall what sort of observations she was under? And by that I mean, was she to be seen 4 times in an hour, or was she to be observed once every hour? Can you help us with that?
Yes, at the time I wasn't aware of any obligations in relation to observations, but since, in relation to the inquest, I found out that she was meant to be observed every hour during the night.
And so far as you are aware, was she?
I have no knowledge of actually how often she was observed, other than in relation to the night she died, because that has been the subject of statements made for the inquest.
Well, let's have a look at your witness statement number 2, please. And if we go to page 2, paragraph 6. Do you have that?
I have that.
So this is page 2, paragraph 6. At the bottom of that, it says, the inquest heard that EPUT staff did not observe Carol as they should have when she was an inpatient. The false reliance on oxyvision emerged during the evidence. The nurses / staff were asserting that they could see the movement happening through the screens, even though they did not actually go inside the room. This is a classic example of poor care provided to vulnerable inpatients. I just want you to expand and explain, please, what the information you received was in regards to observations being undertaken on Carol on the night of her death.
As I said, these arose from statements made at the inquest, but can I just make a comment in relation to oxyvision? I thought the purpose of oxyvision, and as I understand it, how it works, is it monitors certain life evidence of patients by breathing. I'm not sure on what other functions it provides, but it does seem to me if you have something, you have a oxyvision there which is meant to be an aid, and if someone actually stops breathing during the night, then why doesn't the system throw up there's a problem? I don't know enough about oxyvision to say how effective it is, but even if it just highlights there's a problem, it would give it it would at least prompt the staff on duty to to actually investigate if there is a problem. As it is, on the basis of the statements given at the inquest, what appears to have been to happen is that there was a health assistant who was whose job it was to check Carol hourly. She checked Carol. Well, based on her statement, she checked Carol at about 3 o'clock. But she didn't go in the room to do that. She observed Carol from the doorway, and frankly, by all the other evidence provided, it wasn't possible to check from the doorway whether Carol was still breathing, and the health assistants subsequently said that she had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. So she went back into the room she said it was about 10 minutes later. I think because Oxyvision actually is a record it has a time record in it, and it was about 20 minutes difference. And by the time she went in response to a gut reaction to check whether Carol was breathing, she found her unresponsive. So again, that's a factor in, if she'd gone in and carried out a check inside the room, Carol might have been observed as non-breathing earlier, and the subsequent, albeit failed, resuscitation attempts might have been more successful.
Let's move then to the resuscitation that you've mentioned. Whilst we have your witness statement 2 in front of us, I wonder if we could turn to page 3, paragraph 7. You say in the bottom part of this section, this paragraph, staff were delivering chest compressions with Carol on her side rather than on her back, and the oxygen cylinder was not being switched on. If we could turn to your first witness statement, please, page 34. Page 34, paragraph 140. At the bottom of that page, it says here, paramedic staff recognised that the oxygen was not flowing and that Carol was being ventilated with room air, but that the seal of the face mask was poor. The paramedic staff took over the resuscitation attempt, but declared Carol deceased at around 3:50 a.m. Now, I want to ask you about the concerns that you have with regards to the resuscitation. Do you want to expand upon what's in your witness statement?
Yes, I mean, the concerns arose from statements which were given at the inquest. If we go to when Carol was found by the health assistant unresponsive in bed, and the health assistant raised the alarm, she referred to the senior person on duty at that time, who in turn deputed a member of staff to phone for the emergency services. The staff deputed to just make the phone call did not know that in order to get an outside line for the telephone, they needed first to press 9 before pressing 999, which delayed the call to the emergency services. When the emergency services arrived at the hospital, at the mental health unit, which is adjacent to St Margaret's Hospital, it's a secure unit, so you can't get into the unit unless someone lets you in. There was no member of staff there to let them in. And although the response time of the first paramedics unit which arrived was about 6 minutes, there was still a few minutes delay in actually getting access to where Carol was. When the paramedics came in, it was they who observed that resuscitation was not being carried out correctly, and they then took over the resuscitation attempts. And it was they who made a complaint subsequently that the resuscitation wasn't being carried out correctly. In fact, there were 2 units of paramedics who arrived who combined together to carry out the resuscitation attempts, but with no positive response.
Now, just following on from what you've said there, you've already mentioned there was an inquest. Were you legally represented at the inquest?
I was.
Was the trust legally represented?
Yes.
And there was a prevention of future deaths report that was made following that inquest, and we can see reference to that in your second witness statement, page 4, paragraph 13. So that's your second witness statement, page 4, paragraph 13. Do you have that?
Yes.
And it says here, this is a prevention of future deaths report. There is no system that prevents staff that are non-compliant with mandatory training, including basic life support training, from being able to work on EPUT inpatient wards. This is a particular concern generally, but especially such as St Margaret's, where at least some of the wards specialised in treating elderly patients who are likely to be at greater risk of medical collapse than the general population. And I wonder if you can just give us some context, please, as to these 2 matters of concern that were raised during the inquest.
Well, the prevention of further death notice was the one made by the coroner in response to requests made by my legal advisors. My concern in relation to this, in practice, because on the basis of evidence statements given to the inquest, it transpired that there was one member of staff on duty on the night Carol died who wasn't up to date, wasn't compliant with the mandatory training. But as it happens, that member of staff wasn't on duty at the time. They were on a break. And the people who actually carried out the members of staff who carried out the resuscitation attempts, just to repeat, those resuscitation attempts were carried out with Carol on her side, not her back, on her back, with the oxygen not being turned on. My concern is that although the notice of further deaths highlights a problem, my concern is more that the problem that it doesn't highlight is that if you have members of staff who are trained to deal with CPR, and when they are faced with actually an event which requires CPR, they don't follow their training, and this isn't just. There were probably at least three members of staff around when the failed resuscitation was being carried out by the staff before the paramedics carried it out. But all those had been trained for CPR, up to date with their mandatory training. So the question is that training effective? It doesn't seem to be effective. And if we want to go, I know we're only dealing with my witness statement, but I am aware of other situations which have arisen in relation to other family members who've suffered in similar circumstances is that is due to a failure of staff administering CPR. You know, whether they're mandatory trained or not, if they're not able to carry out, as it goes back to, you know, I repeat myself, is the training effective? And if it isn't, what can they do about it? Because without making any accusations about EPUT, I would just actually say I just wonder sometimes that they feel that if they have ticked a box to say that mandatory CPR training has been given to all staff, are they not concerned when there are failures in resuscitation carried out by staff?
Just two topics
Yep.
left to cover with you. One is with regards to investigation. At page 44 of your first witness statement, if you just want to have a look at that, page 44, paragraph 163. You make reference here, paragraph 165, sorry. You say here that EPUT's behaviour, if I can summarise it in that way, gave rise to frustration for the family. Can you just expand upon what was it in their conduct with regards to the inquest and the preparation of the patient safety report that gave rise to concern to you and the family?
As a sort of background, my concerns were raised more after I saw the post-mortem and saw that Carol's death was recorded as being due to a pulmonary embolism, and then I thought, you know, how has that pulmonary embolism been allowed to form? And that's the background. And then after I received the post-mortem, I then waited for EPUT to provide the patient safety inquiry report. And I thought, I can't do any more until I have that report and see what they have to say. Carol's inquest was originally fixed for a date in 2024, and as the inquest date approached, I was concerned that I didn't have enough information in order to question or to help the coroner decide what was the cause of her death. So I contacted the coroner and said, can you postpone the inquest? When I contact the coroner, I mean the coroner's officer, and the response was, no, we can't. And that meant that an inquest was taking place without a patient safety inquiry report being available, and without being able to identify if there were any concerns arising from that report which should be addressed. And so I practice as a solicitor for 47 years, but not in this the sort of the area that, you know, not in relation to inquests. And I was rather frustrated, and in my frustrations, I contacted the charity Inquest to say, this doesn't seem right to me, what can I do? And they said, this is an Article 2. You can say to the coroner, this is an Article 2 inquest, and it needs further consideration. And that's what I did. And as part of that, I got legal advice, and I've been acting with that legal advice since then.
But I just wonder, in terms of EPUT's involvement with the inquest? Did you have any concerns about their involvement?
Yes, I did. I rather thought that EPUT seemed rather more concerned about, as I were, what I would call covering their own back, of making sure that they were seen in the best possible light. It is difficult. EPUT were represented at the inquest. There was only, I had my legal advisors, they had their advisors. I don't know why they, it's up to them if they regard they need to get legal advice in that respect. But my personal experience in observing the interventions by their counsel was it was more for protection of EPUT rather than exploring what caused Carol's death. Were there things there which there were areas of treatment which might be improved in the future, which is my motivation for going through the whole process in any event.
I'd like to ask you final topic, what recommendations, and if it helps at all, you can have page 33 of your witness statement in front of you, page 33, paragraph 133. What recommendations do you invite the chair to consider, please?
Well, there were three basic recommendations which I would want, based on my experience. The first relates to dealing with older patients who have both mental health and physical health conditions. I don't think it's appropriate for the psychiatrist or there is I think a medical doctor specifically a medical doctor on the ward to deal with the physical conditions, but I don't think that's really enough, because it's a specialist area. Lots of areas are specialists. I think what is needed, and needed urgently, is for a consultant with geriatric experience to actually go into a ward, a mental health ward, all mental health wards, particularly where there are older patients, and determine how the patient is actually being treated, probably with more emphasis on the physical conditions rather than mental health conditions, because maybe you can leave that down to the psychiatrist, but no one can. It's a specialist area, and I think, based on my experience and what I've learned of the experiences of other families, that's what should be done as urgently as possible.
Were there any other recommendations that you?
Yes, I mean, I think it's the one in relation to resuscitation is a repetition of what I'm saying is that obviously there has to be CPR training, but the CPR training must be effective. It's not a tick box situation. It concerns people's lives, and it shouldn't be difficult, because in other situations, doctors and other trained people manage to resuscitate, and at least it gives a patient who is suffering from who requires resuscitation an opportunity for it to be done effectively.
And was there a final recommendation?
Yeah, my final recommendation is really in relation to what is, I think my younger daughter has said is the most important thing, which she thinks. And that is that as a family, for her mother, if I'm talking using her voice rather than that of Carol for a change, she said that I felt so frustrated that my mother was unwell and I could only see her a maximum of 1 hour 3 times a week. if we go back to for 2012, 2013, as I was retired, I have visited Carol in hospital, in the mental health unit then, every day. I did that to provide support for Carol. At the time, I just did it automatically, and it's difficult to say whether it was effective or not. But Carol did actually say to me that although she had subsequently, she said, after 2013, she said, although I may not have acknowledged it at the time, it did make a difference that you actually came and saw me every day. And similarly, although I'm not suggesting that my daughter, in particular because she works, that she would be able to visit Carol every day, but she was called into the hospital sometimes when Carol wasn't eating, and she was asked to help with that. Which again is another issue, because I don't really think that was fair to my daughter. I mean, she was too emotionally involved to do that. In the event, she tried to persuade Carol to eat, but in the end, Carol wasn't like being told to do anything, and so that altered their relationship in a negative way at a vulnerable time for both of them.
Well, thank you very much, Ralph. Those are all the questions I have for you. We now have a photograph of Carol that we're going to display. Thank you very much,
well, thank you.
Ralph.
Thank you, Chair.
We're going to give a period of 10 minutes to see if there are any Rule 10 questions, if there are any questions from call participants. If there aren't any questions, that then concludes your evidence. Can I thank you very much for giving evidence today, and we will return at 2 o'clock if there aren't any questions arising. Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to give Carol's story.
And I'm very grateful to you for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you.